my mixing bowl, I went ahead and placed 2 sticks of butter at room temperature, 1 tablespoon of vanilla, and 1 egg at room temperature. I'm going to whisk these ingredients until they incorporate, and that usually takes between 2 to 3 minutes, sometimes a little bit more. So what we're trying to go for is for a fluffy mixture. During the mixing process, always remember to stop your mixer in between certain steps and just make sure to take a spatula and run it around the edges to make sure you catch anything that has been sitting in the corners. I want to stress that it's very important that all your ingredients are at room temperature so that they are able to incorporate a lot easier and a lot faster. I mixed my ingredients for approximately 4 minutes, and this is the result that I got. So basically everything is incorporated and a little bit fluffy. And now I'm going to go ahead and add in my sugar, and I'm going to continue to mix until all of these ingredients once again incorporate. Make sure to stop your mixer and just make sure to scrape the sides of the bowl to incorporate the rest of the sugar. And you'll see that after we added the sugar, the mixture of eggs, butter, and vanilla became a lot fluffier, and you're able to see it here once I scrape. So that's the texture that we are going for. Now I'm going to begin to add the rest of my dry ingredients. So in this bowl, I have all-purpose flour, and I also have my baking powder and my salt. To add in these dry ingredients, I'm simply going to take them and just place all of them into our sugar mixture. You also need to keep in mind that when you're adding in the all-purpose flour, your sugar cookie dough is going to go through stages. So in the beginning, it's going to look like it's too much flour to the ratio of sugar and butter that you added in. But simply what I'm doing here is I'm slowly pulsing in the all-purpose flour to incorporate into the rest of the ingredients. Your sugar cookie dough is going to seem a little bit sandy and dry in the beginning, but that is not when we're going to stop. We're going to continue to mix in our stand mixer until all of our flour, sugar, and the rest of the ingredients are very well incorporated. This is the beginning stage that I was talking about. So here everything looks like it's separated and that it's not coming together. Here is not where you stop. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to continue to mix just to make sure that all of our ingredients incorporate well. In a few minutes, you're going to see that everything is going to start coming off of the side of the bowl, and your dough is not going to keep sticking onto the sides of the bowl, but rather it's going to start forming a ball in the center of your mixer. That's exactly the consistency that we want, and at this point we're ready to stop. You'll also notice that the consistency of this sugar cookie dough is a lot different than probably some of the other doughs that you've used. So basically this cookie dough does not have to be refrigerated or frozen before baking, and we're going to just go ahead and use it straight from here into rolling, cutting, and baking. And this next part is just simply a tip. So usually what I'll do is if I want to make dough of different flavors or with different add-ins, at this point is when I'll separate it in half. I'm going to leave half of it in the mixing bowl, and then I'm going to place the other half in a separate bowl. Another pro tip that I have for you is, let's say that you wanted to flavor the same batch of sugar cookie dough with different flavors. At this point is when you would add in the different flavorings, omitting the vanilla flavor that we used in the beginning. But for these cookie doughs, I'm simply going to leave in the vanilla flavor, and for this dough, I added in 1/4 cup of chocolate chips. You can certainly add whatever you want, but here I'm just going to go ahead and add the attachment again and simply mix until the chocolate chips are incorporated into my dough. For this second half of my sugar cookie dough, I added in 1/2 cup of these rainbow jimmies, and I'm simply going to go ahead and attach my attachment once again and simply mix in these jimmies until all of them incorporate into my sugar cookie dough. If you have some trouble, just make sure to stop in between to make sure that you catch all the rainbow jimmies so that they're able to incorporate well into your dough. After a few minutes, this is the result that you should have. And now that we have both of our batters or both of our doughs ready, let's go ahead and start rolling them out, cutting, and then baking. To roll out my cookies, I am using my Dough Easy rolling system. And what I did here is, although it is a non-stick silicone mat, I always like to sprinkle it with a little bit of powdered sugar. And I really love this rolling system because it has these rolling guides on the side. But if you don't have this system, you can definitely use parchment paper, and you can also use all-purpose flour sprinkled onto your surface. You don't have to use powdered sugar. This is just a preference of mine. To cut out these cookies, I'm just going to use a simple circle cutter, and I will leave all of these cutters down in the description box below. One thing I do have to mention is when adding jimmies, chocolate chips, or anything else into your cookie dough and you will be cutting it out, it is a little bit difficult to cut out when you're using plastic cutters. So this is why you're seeing me press in and then twisting on the side, because I just want to make sure that I'm able to cut out any jimmies that are sticking out past the circle. One thing you'll notice about this sugar cookie dough is that it's very easy to handle, so it's not wiggly and it's not going to run off your hands. It's not going to stick too badly to the mat. So basically what I'm doing here is, before transferring, I'm just cleaning out the edges that are left over that were not part of my circle, and I'm just going to set them aside before transferring. On the side, I have a prepared baking pan with a nonstick silicone mat, and to remove my cookies from the mat, I'm simply going to take a small spatula and I'm just going to wiggle it under the cookies and simply transfer them right over to my baking sheet. If you're having trouble removing your cookies from the surface, make sure to dip your angled spatula into some powdered sugar or all-purpose flour so that when you press it under your cookie, it's a little bit easier to remove it from the surface, which you rolled it out and cut it in. A definite plus for this recipe is that your cookies will not lose too much of the shape, and they will also not expand as much as other recipes that I've tried before. So I definitely hope that you enjoy this recipe and that you enjoy that your cookies will look almost exactly as how you cut them before you bake them. And make sure to save the scraps, because you can definitely roll them out or you can save them for later use, because this sugar cookie dough recipe refrigerates and freezes very well. Next, I'm simply going to repeat the same steps that I did to prepare my mat, and I'm going to go ahead and roll out my chocolate chip sugar cookie dough here. You can also use the tiny little chocolate chips because it makes it a little bit easier. In this case, I just had the normal chocolate chips and it was a little bit hard to cut my circles with these plastic cutters. If you're using metal cutters, it's a lot easier to cut through any add-ins or any mix-ins that you add to your dough, but that's just simply a little side note that I had for you. I hope that you're able to see here how easy it is to handle this sugar cookie dough because, like I said earlier, it doesn't lose its shape. It's not too fragile, but when you bake it, you can definitely bake it to be soft cookies. You can bake them to be a little bit crispier or a little bit crunchier depending on the temperature that you use and the amount of time that you leave your sugar cookie dough in. I like to bake my cookies at 325 degrees between 11 to 13 minutes. This usually gives me a soft cookie and it will be a little bit brown around the edges, but it's a very, very light brown, and this will give me a very soft cookie in the center and around the edges. I also want to remind you that anytime you are baking or cooking anything, definitely follow the directions as far as the temperature, but always keep an eye on the time because there's a lot of factors that can play into how long you should bake something for. So for example, like I mentioned before, I like to bake these for approximately 11 to 14 minutes. If this is your first time baking the recipe, bake them for 11 minutes first and then decide if they need more time to bake because we don't want to burn our cookies or we don't want to over bake them. This is how my cookies looked when they were out of the oven and when I let them cool after a little bit. And simply what I'm going to do for these cookies is I made a simple buttercream recipe. Don't forget to check the description box below because I will leave the ingredients to make this buttercream. And with an angled spatula, I'm just going to dollop on the buttercream and simply swirl it around. There really is no perfect way to decorate these cookies. Just have fun with them, and trust me, the color of the pink frosting with the added rainbow sprinkles makes these cookies, although simple, very fun to decorate and also very fun to receive. And here I'm simply going to just sprinkle my cookies with a little bit of these rainbow confetti sprinkles. Also, make sure to do it before your buttercream dries because once it starts to dry and crust, the confetti will simply fall right off. I really hope that you enjoyed this recipe. Definitely let me know if you have any questions in the comments down below. Let me know if you make these. Don't forget to tag me on Instagram, on Facebook, or just simply write me a comment here on YouTube. Please share this recipe with your friends. Don't forget to subscribe before you go. And also, if you like this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. And I'll talk to you next time. Bye!